Fine. Hello, as always. Good to have you back, mate.
All right.
We welcome Mark Bartley, or Dunno and Barts, guy played under a long time ago. So cheers for joining us, Mark.
No, pleasure.
So first of all, the big question, kind of what got you involved in football? Where did it all start for you?
I go back to the sort of, I started playing obviously like a lot of kids, in primary school, in the playground or whatever else. I wasn't sure if at that point, I wasn't really sure about trying to do anything other than just do something at playtime, at break times, right? So I think that was kind of my thing. And then I actually started playing locally in a side when I was I started quite late. I think me and Michael started quite late, about 11. So my mate Shane Small was, he's a big pal of mine. So we were friends until about sort of like 8, 9, and we were playing. And Shane basically brought me to his team. So I went training with them. And he was playing an age group up at the time. So I was training with them for a bit. And I was kind of on the fringes there, clearly my first team, kind of trying to organise myself and everything else. And then I went down into my own age group. And it was fine. It was flying. And so that was really it. And I really got the bug then, especially because I was winning. So I was playing and I was winning, and
Yeah.
I was in a changing room full of guys that, you don't realise at the time you're playing in the side with guys that you're just winning games, winning trophies, winning tournaments all the time. You just get used to winning. So I did that. And then from there, I just never really looked back, continued just to like flying up through youth football. Don't think I was ever really that clever to be, in with clubs and stuff like that. I was in and around the Reading schools for a bit, but I think that, at that point, when I look back on myself now, and I even look back on myself when I was getting towards an older player, I think if I'd have managed me, I'd have gone a lot further, if I'm honest. But yeah, I always enjoyed it, always loved it, and then started to play non-league when I got a bit older, and and flew through that.
Do you think a lot of that is there not like the opportunity there? Because if I kind of talk about my experiences kind of playing like district football, like if you knew like the district coach or the county coach, then you could kind of go down that route. And if he had ties, then getting trials was a lot easier. But if you didn't, then it didn't seem like there was a lot of opportunity. Would you say it's the same for you as well?
Yeah, I think even more so then, because there was less visibility on it, right? So you had, we had the schools coach who would pick the team, Reading schools. And then I remember there was a stage where there was a guy that, because I was playing right back at the time. There's a guy that used to play in the same team as me on a Sunday, and he was right back, I was right back. He had to play centre back because I was a better right back than him, but then he was playing for Reading schools, and so that was a bit, I wasn't really. I don't think I was really that bothered, because at that point I wasn't sitting there thinking, I want to be a professional footballer, but it's a bit weird, right? So yeah, I think that at that point, definitely the way that the school system was set up, I think that the schools team was very close to the side that was linked with Reading Football Club. And at that point, really, the catchment areas and the way that it worked were really different. So if you lived in Reading, you pretty much had to play for Reading, and then Crystal Palace started to encroach on the area. They put a centre in Bracknell, and so they could start to drag players from this area. But you needed to be connected then, I felt. And also, I think it was just a little while ago, obviously, when I was playing, and I just think that the managers then probably didn't know exactly what they wanted, and so it was really different. I was being managed by dads effectively, so I wasn't really getting any real coach, and they'd get there, set up a game, and the things that I probably needed to work on, I never really got the opportunity to. So, and I was the oldest out of my I got an older brother, but he lived in London. I got the oldest out of my brothers here, so I was the one that was kind of me and Michael at the same time kind of playing. I didn't live with my dad, so my mum used to take my brother to the games, my uncle took me to my games. And so, I guess it's, you just find your way through, right? And like I said, I learned a lot of lessons, which hopefully now I'm sort of benefiting from. You needed to be connected then, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of moving into like senior football then, where did kind of the first, I suppose, break for you happen there?
Yeah, I started playing, I played a couple of games at Reading Town, like reserves. I was in the youth team there. So we got to Allied Counties, and I was playing in the Allied Counties team there with and obviously that was a 2-year thing. So, in the year that they created the team, I was a second year, if you like. And my brother Michael was in the team, my mate Sean Coppin. So there's a few of us in the same team. And I remember the Allied Counties at that point was decent. I think Oxford United used to play in there. I remember we beat Oxford United at their place in one of the games. And then I started to play for Reading Town's sort of team there. Started sort of playing, and then I played local for a while. So I remember what was interesting at that point was there was different, not much difference between, like, if you look at step 5 now and what is essentially step 7 now, there's very little difference between those leagues.
Okay.
So when I was studying, really, we were at university, like, that was the case. So Michael at that point was with Crystal Palace, got to the end, didn't get his YT, then he, went to college. We were playing at college a little bit. We went off to university. When we came back was when we really started to play non-league. And I kind of, to a degree, hung on Michael's coattails for a bit, right? Because Michael came back and, he was, when we were playing locally, I mean, he was just head and shoulders above everything else. And, I was doing all right. And then we'd go and he'd go to a club and, at that point I'd go in and then I'd establish myself. So I had to kind of really build my own presence, and my own reputation. So like I said, I hung onto his coattails a little bit and, it was good. He was a good player. And so then, I managed to play at a few decent clubs. Played a lot of time at sort of Slough, played a bit of Hayes, played a bit of Burnham, bounced around a little bit of Tame. So I did all right. Again, I always feel to myself that I would have progressed maybe better under a manager like me. But I had a good manager at Slough and Steve Brown, and he was really helpful. And some good guys I met there, Eddie Denton and Michael Jilks and some others that were really, really useful.
Oh, my guys.
Yeah. So like really good guys, I learned a lot under them, and I think that's when I really started to get the first inkling that I might be interested in the sort of management side of it. So I took a lot from those guys and saw the impact that they had on me and some of the other players that I played with, and made some friends for life as well from football. So it was never a loss, but probably
so
done a bit more.
Going into coaching, and do you think it's was it as much of a you saw how much you gained and developed in a small space of time under people like that, and you thought, if only I had that at a younger age, maybe I could have that influence on someone else? Or kind of, was it more of a case of, like, because you were making kind of good friends in football, you're like, I just want to keep this going, like, it's such a good place to be? Bit of both, like.
Bit of both, I think. Yeah, I loved the so as I started to get older and become, you're more experienced, and I started to enjoy the leadership piece more. So I think that's something, when I look back even to when I was a kid, I remember reading my school reports and stuff, and they'd always say that I had these sort of leadership skills, and I don't think you really know what they are. And I really enjoyed that though. So I found myself being captain at a lot of clubs, and when I sort of started to, when I ended playing, I was playing for Roddy Slater at Reading Town. Mm-hmm. And so, I really, he kind of, we were talking about it, and he brought me in as like a player coach. So I was a captain, I was player coach. I was really enjoying that and getting my head around it. And, Roddy needed to step away from the club and then I remember at the time it was like, myself and Marcus were there, and, the chairman said, look, will you guys be sort of caretaker it till the end of the season? And it was like, yeah. So, it kind of felt like a natural progression for me. I probably had a couple of years left in terms of playing, but I felt as though that the opportunity was there, and, I had to take it. So I did that. The team was in a difficult position at the time, actually, and we finished quite strongly. And so, then the following season, obviously, we had a good season, and then, that led to me kind of jumping to Marlow. So, I kind of think it was a little bit of both. I wanted to keep it going, but it was definitely playing to my natural strengths. Yeah,
for sure. I remember that time actually being at Binfield, and I remember you as a player, tough to play against. Reading Town was always a horrible place to go. Especially as at Binfield, the pitch was nice. Like, everything's nice. Like, everything's get cake after the game. Like, it's just. Whereas Reading Town, the changing rooms were small, quite often wet. Yeah. Like, the floor was wet before you even started. But then certainly, certainly more so under yourself. But even remember when it was it? I'm trying to think of his name now. Ian. Millard?
So you had
is it Colin Millard? Sorry,
Colin Millard. Yeah, Colin Millard. Yeah.
Like, even under his days, like, it was always tough place to go.
Yeah.
Certainly, I remember when you took over and going there, and it was just proper battle.
Yeah, look, I mean, when I took over at that time, I remember the first season we just needed to stay up, so we had to be horrible, right? And then the following season, when I was able to build, my own side, and I was able to bring in a few players. I was able to get like a Richard Witt in. We had sort of Ray Spence there for periods. We had, and then I brought Brian Gladwin. I got Brian Gladwin in then as well. And you guys, Binfield at that time were the team to catch, right? So all the team that kept winning it really in the Hellenic League at that point were Oxfordshire side. So we'd look and it would be like, it was Wantage or, Ardley, all those big sides out that way. But when I looked locally and I was trying to build my brand, I'm like saying, right, who do I need to aim at? And it was Binfield. And I remember, I remember the things that sort of, that turn. And I remember we played you guys once. We played you in quick succession. So we played you in a cup game. We might have played you in the league and then the FA Cup, and it might have been over the course. It was a real quick succession. I feel like it was over the course of like a week or two. And I think we drew one game and Binfield beat us in the other game. And I remember afterwards, you used to have that Binfield TV thing, right?
Yeah.
And unlike other managers, when they lose, they like try to hide away from those things. I like to watch those things. They fuel me. They make me focus on what I need to do next. And I'll never forget. Obviously, I get on with Tally, no problem. I remember Tally did the interview and he said, it was a 2-game strategy. We had a 2-game strategy to beat them. And I sat down and I thought, hey, it was never a 2-game strategy, never. So I'm fuming, obviously. I'm fuming. So we've and then we played you at the end of the season, and we battered you lot. And what happened was, I remember that game because I remember looking and I thought, we're going to Binfield. I had that as my fuel, and I had and I played Gladwin and Whitty as 2 wingers, put them both out wide, and we just hit long angled balls over the top of your fullbacks into those players. And I think it was a convincing score. I can't remember what it was.
5-1. I remember it.
Yeah. And so. It was always about making my teams hard. I don't want anyone to want to play my side. If someone's looking forward to coming to play us, whether the surface is good or whatever else, then we're the wrong sort of team. I don't want anyone turning up looking forward to playing to my team. Terry will tell you now, I've been on the phone to Terry earlier, at Marlow, I want that pitch as big as possible. When players turn up, our pitch is big anyway, they turn up and have a look. Yeah. They see a slight slope, see the size of the pitch, and it's like, whoa. And my team's fit, so we're going to cover the grass, and then it means that we're going to drop a couple of balls in behind you, and I've got pace in wide areas, and your fullbacks need to know that they're not going to be overlapping today and all that. So it's part of my makeup. It's just in my DNA, and like I said, when I got that, and when I got the Reading Town job, I wanted to surpass Binfield, and we finished. The first year, my first full season, we finished ahead of you guys, so that was a success for me. Yeah, highest bar, that was my thing.
Yeah, I remember that. So talking about them games initially. So the 0-0 game, I remember I was away on holiday, and then I come back, and then I think we beat you 3-0 in the replay.
Yeah.
And then, I remember the 5-1 as well. And by the way, we were not expecting that.
Yeah. You won. I was.
That one hurt. Yeah. But
you used to score every game. That was a problem. That was why I had to come and sign you. Then as soon as I got to Marlow, it's like, yeah.
Well, yeah. So I remember that's kind of really when I took note because. Although we had tough games against Reading Town, we were always expecting to beat them, And then that 5-1 was like, hold on a second, like that shouldn't happen. And I started to pay a bit more attention to what you guys were doing in the league. And I suppose kind of certainly as a manager, that's kind of where I really kind of noticed you. And then we met up the following year.
Yeah.
But on those Marlow days, actually, I remember one thing. Kind of talking about your makeup. There's one thing that you used to say before a game that has stuck with me ever since. And you say like first 5 minutes, just right over the top of them. Now, if they can't deal with it, well, guess what we're going to do for 90 minutes till they can figure a way to deal with it. And that's the point. It's not a case of I'm an advocate for long ball, but you're basically saying if they can't solve a problem, we're going to keep it as simple as we can for us and as hard as we can for them. And and in terms of winners' mentality, I think that's key. We're gonna make life horrible for you and easy for us, and I think you'll win a lot more than you'll lose if you keep it.
A lot of people don't like it though. A lot of people that ruthless streak, right? To have that, some of it's winning mentality, some of it's ruthlessness, and the fact is, if you find something that works and it continues to work, you just keep doing it. You might have more in your locker, but if you don't need to go to stage 2, then don't go to stage 2. If they can't deal with you at stage 1, you keep it at stage 1. That's just my kind of view on it. And you're right. And we, even up till now, my team talks don't change that much. And, that's what I believe. I believe in, look, you ask them a question. If they got the answer to it, you ask them another question and we'll find something that they can't answer. And then that's what we have to do. But yeah, no, I love it. I love making it difficult for the opponent. That's the game.
Definitely.
Game.
So I was just going to ask Ryan a question there. You still about, mate?
Yeah, sorry, I just trying to sort my camera out, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, no. So I was going to say, like, in regards to that kind of like that mentality with coaching, would you say there's like a difference between when you're at Bournemouth and then when you're at non-league? Is there kind of still that kind of like ruthlessness now, or ruthlessness there? Or is it more about development at Bournemouth and not so much that? What would you kind of say?
Yeah, it was about development. But then when you come into non-league, I think it's like, obviously I was there a little at League One, Championship time, so it was always about trying to play football. Eddie always went to try and play football and stuff. And I said to you before, when we spoke about like my first ever loan move, I struggled because you went from playing football a certain way with sort of 11 players or a whole squad on the same wavelength because you're in every single day, and then you go to like non-league or part-time and it's completely different because you get mixed bag sometimes of players. Some players want to play a certain way, some players don't. Some players, because it's not necessarily like a full-time job, sometimes you get players that don't necessarily want to do what the manager wants to do. So it just becomes a lot more difficult, I found anyway. And then it becomes more about just more like mixing it up. But then as time's gone on, I've felt like you can now start to see, you can see sort of like a design when you play against teams. Now, so I know if I go play Chelmsford, I know it's going to be, right, I'm going to have to make sure that I've got my tin hat on. I'm going to have to win every header. Like, do you know what I mean? You know that now. Mm-hmm. But I feel like as well, and that's what I said before about, there comes a point where I think sometimes you have to play to the league, if that makes sense. So any team that tries to play total football in the, like the Conference South or really the conference tend to struggle. And I think so. I don't know whether that's just my personal belief of is like you can want to play a certain way of football, but I feel like you have to be aware of the level, say either managing or coaching. And Mark might be able to touch on it slightly, but you wouldn't be able to get Conference South players playing total football like Barcelona. They just wouldn't be capable of doing it. So to actually ask them to do it, you're not, and then getting frustrated because they can't do it it's not, in my opinion, it's not fair on them because you're basically setting them up to fail. Yeah. And then you're having a go at them because they can't do it. And it then becomes more, I feel like ruthless as well. And I feel like, especially in non-league, more so than the league, it's more cutthroat. Like, managers don't care. Some managers do, some managers don't. Some managers, whether you're on a contract or non-contract, it doesn't matter. They will do whatever they need to do to get rid of you. Or there will just always be political reasons. Oh, we didn't have a good FA Cup run, I can't afford you anymore. Or, oh, we're not doing this. Or there's always just some rubbish story behind. I think Hayes and Yedlin at one point had over 87 players play for them in one season, and I was like, wow. And then the following season they tried to sign me. I said, hell no. Do you know what I mean? So it's I just feel there is a bit of a difference, but I think it depends who's in charge. I think if the person in charge got good understanding of it, then I think it's fair. But some people, I just feel like I've played for some managers without naming names, and they've just kind of like, I remember I was at one club and we was flying. The manager left, went to a team higher up. The new manager come in, he's like, I'm not going to change anything. Within 2 weeks, like half the squad had been changed. He had brought in like 7 loanees. You can only play 5. We'd gone from playing sort of like front to back into the target man, getting the ball down from there, getting out wide, crossing, having that as our style, to now we're going to play total football. But then we're still going to boot it out front. But our target man, you just got rid of. We've now got a little man up front, and then it's like, and it was just just kamikaze end of the season. And then when things weren't going right, it was, oh, you lot this, and this. And it was like, oh, hold on a minute. And to be fair, that year, I think he lost the dressing room massively, like even so early on. But yeah, that's just kind of, my view is kind of, it is more ruthless. There is, it is about development and higher up, but at the same time, I feel like it's about a development as an individual, yes, but as a team, and you're all playing the same way week in, week out. The only things that will change will be real tactical decisions. Whereas in non-league, like, you could play football one week, route one the next week, let the other team have the ball the following week, and it's like you might only do about half an hour work with it at some point throughout the week. So it becomes difficult then to actually do that.
Yeah, so Mark, I remember having a conversation with you about Marvin, and he, the words you said to me then is he said his hardest level he found was Conference South because you've got some real high quality players there, but you ain't got the time to work with them quite as much. You've obviously got all the travelling as well. You've still got a job at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think I think the non-league game prepares you really, really well for going into professional football. I think if you can make a success of non-league, if you can sort of really harness what's in and around that environment and the things that you need to do. I think if you can survive in non-league, if you can survive at sort of step 2, then if you've got the ability, you've got a great opportunity when you push on, because like you said, all of those additional factors are taken away from you. And I think sometimes having that little bit of hunger is what gets you there. And I think that's, to be fair with Marvin, I think that's a lot of what helped fuel him. I think it helped him as well.
Marvin used to hunt people down.
Yeah. But I mean, look, the reality is with Marvin though, right? So when Marvin was younger, he didn't like playing football. And me and Michael used to force him. And, we used to literally force him to play, put him in goal. Me and Michael force him to play. And then we used to play with us, and we used to like just literally bully him. He's 6 years younger or whatever. Bully him around. I remember me and Michael used to just do that. And we went and watched him play once against his own age group, and we just saw this guy just smashing into everyone. We were like, okay, well.
Yeah, that didn't really change
him. Really small. Yeah. Oh, he was tiny as well. That was a problem with Marvin. So when he was at Reading and they released him for being too small, and he went to Brentford, got released for being too small. And then he went into non-league, and I remember then even thinking, I remember playing one game with him. And that's probably when for me that he clicked, because there was a long time before that when I say to Mark, I don't know if he's that good. I don't know if he's going to make it or whatever. I remember playing a game. I remember the first time, like I said, Shane Small referred to him earlier, the first time we were all playing at Burnham. And after one game, Shane came up to me and said, your brother's going to be a professional. Literally one match. And I remember playing the game, and we're under pressure. And Marvin's young at this time, he's got to be 17, 18, young. And he just grew and took the game by the scruff of the neck. Next thing, he was taking the ball and driving with it and covering ground, and he was hitting challenges. And I thought that was the first time I put my hands up and thought, hold on, this guy's got the chance. But, we took him out for a load of runs, made sure that he was fit. When he went on trial to the clubs, when he went to MK Dons originally, and then he went to Bournemouth on trial, he was as fit as the players that were there, because the one thing that we were big on was making sure that you don't get there and don't get caught out on something that you can control. And I believe that fitness is something that you can control, and I try to instill this into the players, right? So for me, I'm comfortable knowing that my football ability was what it was, and I maximised that. It was never going to be an opportunity for someone to come back to me and say, you know what, Mark, you didn't work hard enough, or you didn't do this. I used what I had available to me, my skill set, everything else, and ended up where I ended up. And, possibly, like I said, with different management, who knows, over a long period of time. If I'd have met Steve Brown earlier, who knows? But, but I think that, when I look around, I just think to myself, you can't let those things, you can't miss out on opportunities because you haven't worked hard enough. I think with him, that was what it was. And then he was fearless, and then, ends up being where he is.
Do you think that's a kind of a good part to his kind of training, if you like, is actually being bullied around by brothers who are 6 years older than him? Coming up against people your own age, all of a sudden, like it's no contest.
He was. Sorry, go on.
No, go on. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, his character was part of it, because he was always fearless and had this unbelievable self-confidence. Unbelievable, like unwavering. He believed in himself. And there was a stage where, he was 17, 18, whatever he was going on. And if you'd have put this guy in there against Gerrard or Lampard, he would have had the belief that he was going to get the better of them. That was something that he had, that I think we're all strong-minded, but I think that's probably where he's slightly different to me and my other brother. Like, he believed that, do you know what I mean? He believed that he was going to get the better of the opposition. And I think that a lot, but I think he, went into every game and he just absolutely believed it. And I think that just helped him to to do what he needed to do to get through games. And he's and he does just that, whatever it takes.
I was gonna say, you hear that saying that if you could bottle that confidence, then it'd sell for a lot, and that's probably a good example, right?
Oh, yeah, he's.
I think as well. Like I think like he just knew what he was good at. I think. Yeah. Like I remember when obviously he was at Bournemouth and stuff, and you had him and you had Anton Robinson. Like they were two completely contrasting players. Anton was like the guy almost that just allowed him to do what he did, because Anton was one of them like technical players, just gets the ball, keeps it ticking over, Mr. Reliable. But then Marvin was the one that always got the praise, was a fan's favourite, because he was the one box to box. He was, like you said, making massive driving runs with the ball, without the ball, smashing people, like just giving like that energy, I think, to the team. And obviously that was a massive driving force, and that's the reason why Eddie took him with him to Burnley as well, because I think with his belief and stuff, and just the way he played, and like he didn't do anything, I don't think, extraordinary, but he just knew what he was good at, I think, and he just done it very well. And that sort of, when they say sometimes there's a game that's like 0-0 and it's dead, and then you're just waiting for someone just to either make a big driving run or just to smash someone, and it was just like that. Literally, you just see him doing it, and everyone would just be like, get right behind him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My sort of views.
So the next part of this is obviously in light of what's happened this week. I feel like it's a good opportunity to talk about it.
Oi. Sorry, Ian, go on.
You right? I'll start that bit again. Right. So in light of obviously what's happened this week, I feel like now's a good opportunity to talk about it. Obviously with the Black Lives Matter movement, what happened in America with George Floyd, and then obviously it's carried on all around the world, really. I want to talk about, first of all, kind of like racism that you've experienced firsthand. I think it'd be a real eye-opener for everyone to kind of get an idea of what it's like to experience it. And I know when we spoke the other day, there's a word used, which was compromise, which seems mad that that's a word that we have to use, but that's your experience. So kind of, I suppose, what was your first experience like being on the end of kind of racist abuse?
I think like when I think about football, especially, I think it, when we were young, I think we got used to get. So I played in a team that was quite diverse from a sort of ethnicity standpoint, and I think we had there were a couple of times when you get it from, or you'd hear stuff from parents on the side, right? So I think at that point, it probably was just more, they wouldn't necessarily shout it at you, but you can hear the comments, right? So you're thinking, okay, whatever. And then certainly as I got more towards youth football, you get a little bit more. But I think where we really found it difficult was, and what the real struggle was with the officials, right, with the referees. And part of that was, I think, is twofold, really. One is, I think, and this is always my view on the education piece, because I think that culturally they maybe necessarily didn't understand us as players. So I played in as you get older, and I was playing in a team with quite a lot of black players. They just didn't understand us, and didn't understand that we grew up in most of us in Caribbean homes, African or Caribbean homes, and the people are particularly passionate and animated. And when we engage, if you listen, when we're talking, the voices just get loud, because we're just, that's the culture that we came up in. And so, we talk a lot with our hands and whatever else. And I think the referees really struggled to kind of understand that. So I think one part of it was that. And the second part of it was, I think, that they were threatened by us. You didn't have to do anything for somebody to feel intimidated by you or scared of you. And the referee quite often, once they take off the black kit, they're just a normal guy, right? And so they would feel intimidated by this group of black guys that are on the pitch, and so you'd get a lot of that. So I think we used to get a lot of cards and stuff that were unnecessary, and then you'd get then sometimes I remember it was particularly bad when I started playing when I was in probably my early 20s, was probably when it was at the peak, and referees were just there's no other word for it, they just cheat. during games, you know, and you'd lose. I mean, you'd start off and you'd be playing, and then it really wore you down, because week after week you'd be going in and the referees are just cheating. They're just cheating, like, you know. And I remember thinking that sometimes you really made you at stages wanted to, you felt on the brink of either quitting the game, just stop playing, or reacting in a way that would have got, you know, led to a negative outcome. And I think that was part of the reason why I stopped playing local football and then started to move towards non-league, because I said there wasn't much between the levels and whatever else, but a lot of it was that it's just I didn't enjoy the fact that, not that it didn't happen in non-league and it doesn't happen, but it wasn't as pronounced as in, you know, as in local football. And I found that I found really difficult as a young guy. So that was you know, you had to go on playing at Newbury once, and you know, we're getting it from the crowd. Like, we're playing, I think BAT Sports or something like that, getting it from the crowd. You know, there's about 50 people there, and you've got like 5 or 6 people racially abusing you, right? So it's just like what's going on? And players would say it on the pitch, you know, and then you'd be like, but it was, and the problem we had was that if we didn't defend ourselves, there was no defence, because, you know, the manager at the time wasn't really interested in engaging on that. You know, he didn't really have, or I felt like he didn't really have my back to kind of go in the trenches if this thing really happened. And so what you end up doing is you end up playing and you think, well, if I'm going to get racially abused, and it annoys me and I want to react, and whether or not it means that I want to, you know, hit someone in the challenge or really just try and win the game, whatever else, I needed to be around players that felt the same as me. And so at that point, I think that's why you saw back then there was much more segregation in terms of the teams, because you ended up getting in a situation where if somebody racially abused you and you're the only black player on the team, it's, you know, what are you doing and what are you going to do? And the guy would do it and he'll be open and, you know, whatever else. And as you started to play with more sort of black players, and, you know, then always, as with everything else, you have 1 or 2 loose cannons, right? So you only need one of them, you know, in your side, and matches will start getting abandoned. So that was where I really started to feel it at that point. And then I think as I was playing, you know, there were managers that it was clear they would never play more than so many black players in their team. It was just apparent. It was like an unwritten rule. You know, there was never going to be more than 3 or 4 of you in the team. So if you had, even if you had good black players and you all went there, and it got to the stage where we kind of knew that as a collective of players, we knew if you went to a club and they've already got 2 black players there, you know, you might be up against it, regardless of how good you are. You know, you'd have to be someone you'd have to really be you'd have to be the absolute marksman, banging 50 goals for them to do whatever. And you'd have to conform, you know, I'd have to compromise my approach, my character, the way that I conduct myself, because I'd need to conform to, you know, whatever they regard as being the standard. And that was the reason why, you know, the question I get, and even now in management, question that a lot of managers will ask me about players. So they'll you know, quite often, like I would do, if I'm looking to sign a player, looking to sign Ian, right, I'll call one of his old managers and say, what's he like? You know, what's he about? You know, yeah. Question that they get, which for me is the masked question, is, you know, what's his attitude like? Now, I very rarely get asked about the attitude of white players, even up till now. Someone calls me, you know, what's he like? Is he going to track in? Is he turn up to training? They don't ask me about the attitude. The attitude question typically comes for around players of ethnic minorities. And it's not that I'm saying that those managers are racist or whatever, but this is a sort of like the unconscious bias piece, right?
Yeah.
So what you're really asking me when you're saying what's his attitude like is he the type of black player that will conform and come in and, you know, act like all my other lads act, or is he at the other end of the scale where he's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to manage? He's going to be a little bit more, you know, he's going to be a bit more spontaneous in terms of the way that he acts and everything else. And that's the difficulty. And for me, football management is the same as if you're at work and you're managing people, right? You have to be able to manage people right the way across the spectrum. And if you're going to try and build a team, you need people that are right the way across the spectrum. You know, the best thing about, you know, we were talking about when you played for me, the greatest thing about that changing room was I had players in that changing room, some of those black players that no other manager wanted, no matter how good they were, because they were too difficult to deal with. Philip John, Richard Witt, Raymond Spence. If you know, Whitty was a great player, but everybody knew that he had that volatile streak to him. But that's what made him a great player, because he had that combative streak. I had my brother in there as well. These players physically that were absolutely never going to take a backward step. Now, the reason why I could get them all in a team at Marlow was because people admired them as players, but they would find them really difficult to deal with as individuals. I just gave them the platform to play. Then we had the guys at the back keeping the door closed. We had you up front scoring goals and Gladwin around doing what he was able to do, because we just provided that piece. And that was the team. And so when I look at it, even now, like I say, the players that I have, and I have some players that some managers, you know, wouldn't touch. But that's because they don't understand them. They don't know how to deal with them. They don't want to know how to deal with them.
Do you think that do you think that as well, that it's down to how people are portrayed, like publicly and also through like media and things like that? Because obviously I went out to America a couple of years ago. The first time I've ever been, and everything that I sort of you see, whether it's on social media or on the news, when you go to America, is, you know, gangs, cultures. Essentially, you see a mixed race man or a black man with tattoos or whatever. It's always, whenever you've associated that with America, but over here, it's always gang related. So I remember I first went over there, and not through no fault of my own or anything like that, but my subconscious, I saw a guy turn up named Kyle Porter, one of the nicest guys, footballers I've sort of come across. And but my first initial reaction was, whoa, because I think subconsciously in my head, I'd never been out to America. All I'd ever known, or the way that it was always portrayed out, you know, in TV, social media, whatever, was that that is what like a gang member sort of looks like, if that makes sense. And obviously, from my point of view, going back there, and I should never have done that. But I just think it was like a subconscious thing, and I didn't treat him any differently. You know, I got to know him, and he was, like I said, he literally is a Canadian guy, really, really nice guy, absolutely nothing like what it gets portrayed. But because of how he gets portrayed over here, that was just the subconscious of. Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
It's absolutely that, right? And I find that now in management, the same thing. I find it with players. Like, you know, look, the media is the greatest thing, and you know, the greatest thing about social media is the fact that, look, you know, it's removing the power from the printed press, in my opinion. So you have the printed press where you had a small number of people who controlled a large, you know, a large amount of the content that we consumed, basically. Now, the problem was that, you know, you've got these people that sit down there and they're writing these stories and they're portraying people in certain ways, and it's negative. And so what I mean by that is, like, look, for me, I kind of view myself as, look, I'm the kind of person that I have my own views. I kind of survive under my own steam. I'm quite difficult to sort of erode in terms of that part, right? But what I do notice is if I'm sitting down here and I'm needing to look to say, where is my, where's that person that I aspire to be? Where's that person in the elite game, you know, the highest level of football that looks like me? And you know what? I didn't realise how important that visual part was until I had kids. And then you start to realise that they will look on the TV and how much they will replicate what they see, and how much what they see matters to them, and how it influences how they want to look and how they want to be. As an adult, you know that these things aren't right, but as a child and as people coming up, you are influenced by what the media you consume. So I look at football and I say, right, I'm here now, and if I said to you, name me 2 black managers in the history of time that are great tacticians, you'd be scratching your head, because the media's never portrayed a black manager as being a great tactician. The media, the closest we've ever got is the guy at Wolves. They've never portrayed a black manager as being a great tactician. I sit here now and I look at it now, even in non-league. You speak to people about me and my reputation, and I've done this. I've asked people. I speak to the guys. They'll tell you my teams are tough to beat, uncompromising, all of this stuff. You know, like which it makes it just sound like we're just combative. Yet You go over the last, whatever is 3 seasons, twice out of those 3 seasons, my team have been right there with the best defensive record. They tell me my team have got bad discipline, but I'm like, okay, you know, there's real reasons for that in terms of the referees not understanding us, and I can talk about that. But the reality is you can't have it both ways. If I've always got 10 players on the pitch, 9 players on the pitch, how do I end up with the best defensive record? If my team are not well drilled, if my team are not sure of what their jobs are when we're out of possession, how are we doing this? That means tactically, like, you know, I've got to be good. I've got to be doing something. Me and my coaching team have to be doing something, but I've never portrayed that way. If you speak to people about me, I'll be on the sideline, I'm on the touchline, I'm aggressive, I'm loud, I shout. The guy on the other side of the dugout doing exactly the same as me. Oh yeah, he's a great manager. He kicks every ball, you know, he's passionate. I'm aggressive. And this is just what it is. It's how people interpret the thing. I see, you know, you see Paolo Di Canio when he's a manager, you know, Italian managers, you know, right up in the referee's face. They do this, you know, on the continent, in you know, African or Caribbean society, we put our hands up. We're like, what's this? Well, our hands will be in the air. That's how we react. You know, if I drive down the road and see my mate and he thinks I haven't seen him or whatever, he just put his hand up like, what are you doing? That's how we act. But the referee now, when and he's made my hands up, this is aggressive.
Yeah.
This is aggressive. And everything I do is aggressive. You know what the thing is? I had to be conscious and compromise about, even when I'm going to football, the way that I dress, because when I was training a lot, when I was going to the gym a lot, they get intimidated by me. I had a referee write a report about me once saying that I was intimidating. I was deliberately trying to intimidate him as he was trying to come into the tunnel. So when they described my body language, I was stood there with my arms folded. Okay? Now, arms folded is quite a defensive body position, right?
Yeah.
So normally people do that when they're vulnerable, when you feel threatened, right? I'm not comfortable here. I'm not comfortable. That's what the arms fold.
I'm literally sat with my arms crossed now.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like I'm you know, I don't feel comfortable. But yet for me, that was described as an aggressive body position, because that's just their interpretation. And so the media portray that a lot. I talk about, you know, you talk about players. Who's the black player that they talk about that's, you know, that's really clever, you know, really intelligent player. You know, Raheem Sterling's good. Raheem Sterling's good. You know, I watch him drop in between lines, pick up the ball in these areas, makes it difficult for fullbacks to pick him up. They're talking to me about how sharp he is, how quick he is, physical attributes. They're not talking to me about what he's doing in his mind, the fact that he's seen the fullback make a move and he's then dropped into the pocket. They're not talking about none of that. And this is the problem when you portray players like that, and you know, then what are the next ones that come up? What do they aspire to be? Well, my 12-year-old son's sitting down and watching football, and he's saying, well, if nobody that looks like me is deemed to be, you know, unless you're a superstar, unless you're a Neymar, where it's, you know, they can't even control that. It's like, you know, who does he look at and say, right, that's what I want to be? I know that's achievable. It's fine if you're a trailblazer. Not everybody's a trailblazer. Not everybody has the energy and the focus and the foresight and the vision to drive that thing themselves. Sometimes you need someone that you can see that, right, that is possible. I will aim for that. I'll aim to surpass that. And that's the problem that we have, is the way that the players are portrayed. It has that impact. The way that managers are portrayed, the way that I know that I'm portrayed like that. And the reason why I'm a problem for people is because I can happily, they buy into the stereotype until they have to engage me. And then when they engage with me and then they realize actually they're not going to be able to outwit me, then they get frustrated. That's my experience.
How would you think, obviously, you'd go about that change then? Because like I know that there's been obviously the whole sort of I think it was last Tuesday, they done like Blackout Tuesday on social media, and obviously doing all this sort of Black Lives Matter thing. Now I'm 100% all for it. I didn't join in though with the Blackout Tuesday stuff, because for me, one, I felt like all it was doing was burying what was actually being shown, because when you start typing in Black Lives Matter or Blackout Tuesday, all you would see is black screens. You then stop seeing actually what you're trying to, you know, bring to light. But also because I feel like there's people out there, and I think there's quite a lot of people out there that they'll just jump on the bandwagon for 2-3 days, and then they'll go back to their normal sort of day routine. And it was like, because everyone else was doing it, they felt they they should do it, as opposed to, no, I want to make a change, so I'm going to do it and I'm going to stay to it. It's like, oh, I do it because it's the hype at the moment. Oh, Black Lives Matter. I'll go and join a protest because it's the hype, and that because I want to. Like, I see a video. There was a woman, and it was mad. It was on Twitter. She obviously like all into her Instagram and stuff, and she had a sign, and all she did, there was a protest walking. All she done is step out in front, hold the sign up, took photos, bang, 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 put the sign down, walked off. I was like, what? And do you know what I mean? So I'm just like, obviously, for me, I'm glad that people like AJ, John Boyega, Biega, and all these bigger names now, from my experiences, I've never seen these big names come out, join the locals, and really, do it with them. I think that is massive. But my biggest concern is, I'm all for it. 100%. You get people that say, no, all lives matter. No one's ever said that they don't. But it's like, and I read a weird statement. It's like, if you go home and your wife says, do you love me? Well, the right answer is, I love everyone. But that's not, do you know what I mean? It's, I love you, yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, and it's kind of the same thing. Yes, everyone knows all lives matter, but obviously at the moment, there's that big, thing that we're trying to change with the Black Lives and everything else. But yeah, my point is like, so how would you say you go about it? Because I feel like there's been times where it's come up, it's been a big thing, then it goes quiet again. Then there's something else, then another guy like George Floyd ends up dying, and it comes up again, and it goes quiet again. And I'm like, I've got to a point now where I'm like, I've sort of sat back, watched, and I want to try and make a change because, I have a lot of cultural friends and everything else. And, Michael Jilks' boy is one of my best friends, coming from obviously a Caribbean background and stuff like that. So for me, it's although I haven't personally experienced that myself, I know I'm there side by side with my friends when they're experiencing it, And for me, it is massive to try and change
allyship that. Being an ally is key, right? So you're right in terms of the Blackout Tuesday thing does in a way it can take away the visual impact that you can have on that given day. But what it also does is it shows the world that we won't
togetherness,
And I think that that's where we are, right? So the biggest thing for me, this time feels different.
Yeah,
this time feels different, and it feels different because first of all, we've got some really high-profile people that have stood up and said, "Look, this isn't enough. This isn't good enough."
Yeah,
and that's these are the people across all ethnicities. Because the ally piece has been key across here, right? So you've got people from, be they black, white, whatever, they're all standing together, shoulders to shoulder, saying, look, this isn't good enough because this is a scourge of society. Because it's not, in the UK, the police aren't armed, but, we, ordinarily aren't armed, but, we still have those incidents every now and again. And I can guarantee you if the UK police were armed, we wouldn't be that far away. We wouldn't be that far away because those are the same things that happen, right? So, I look at it now. I'm 41 years old. I drive down. I got, got a decent job, kids. I could drive down the road now. If a policeman drives past me the opposite way, I still now have my eyes in the rearview mirror because I'm waiting for this guy to turn around. Because that's what they used to do to me all the time. Used to happen to me all the time. And so it's difficult to shake those things, right? Because those are things that are now ingrained in me. Like I said, they haven't stopped. I haven't been stopped for a long time, primarily because when I get stopped now, I'm a difficult customer to deal with because I need to know why you stopped me. I need to understand what the problem is. If your answers aren't right, we're gonna have issues because I'm fortunate enough to now be able to afford if I need to take this thing any further. So we're gonna have issues, and so I believe that as I drive around, they'll know that it's not worth.
Yeah, you can't be marked.
Yeah, they'll know that it's not worth stopping me. But you know what? I still have that thing in the rearview mirror. I remember when I started driving. Back then, when you used to get stopped by the police, they used to give you these. If you get stopped and you didn't have all of your documents with you, they'd give you a producer. So it just said within 7 days, go to the police station and produce whatever documents you didn't have at the time out of your license, your MOT certificate, and your insurance. Right. So that was it. Your tax disc was in the window, so you didn't need to worry about that. If you didn't have any of those other three, they could give you a producer, which means in 7 days, go to Thames Valley Police Station and produce this document. Now, in 1 week, probably just over a week, it was about 8 days, I had 7 producers. I got 2 producers in the same day. The police stopped me, give me a producer. So I'm like, you know what? I said to the guy, I've got, look, these other two, whatever, no problem. I don't care, mate. Produce again. I got stopped later that same day. That first producer's in my car. The same another policeman gave me another producer just to be difficult.
Mm.
I remember they ended up giving me some issue because say they gave me 8, I might have produced 7. I went and I produced all of them at the same time, ticked the thing, and then one of them I didn't, and they tried to write some letter to me saying something. That was my experience growing up. So now when I see a policeman, I have difficulty building that trust because I start from a position of you're about to marginalise me, because that was my experience.
But you know, I think the crazy thing about that is then the way then people spin it is that you feel guilty about something. Do you know what I mean? When it's not, but that's like there's people out there that spin it again because, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Even if it's agenda. Not like
suits their agenda, right? It suits their agenda for me to be an aggressive guy, and it's got something to hide. And the reason why I do, you know, because I did think a couple of times on maybe the time before the last time I was stopped, I thought maybe, you know, I should just comply. But you know what? No, because I am legal. I have got all of my documents. They're stopping me for no good reason. I'm not pulling any illegal turns. I'm not speeding. My car's fine. It doesn't look like it's got anything wrong with it. Yeah. And, you know, I remember the guy stopped me and he started talking about going to check my tyre. Like, he stopped me for something. I can't remember what he said he stopped me for. I got out of my car and I walked towards him. So we're in between the two cars. And then he wants to go and check my tyres. And I'm like, hold on, are you trying to tell me that me driving down the road, you seen something on my tyre that makes you want to check my... You see what I mean? So yeah, this is how I was living. And so, you know, it happens to a lot of guys. It happens to a lot of us out there, and it's not right. And I think, like I said, when I think to now, the difference with this time is this whole ally piece. Because if you go back to those other times when, you know, you'd have seen those videos and guys have been shot, it was 99% the black community that was in uproar about it. It was 99% of the black people that were really vocal about it. What we've seen now is, so we had that issue with George Floyd, but we also had the video of the same day of the lady with the dog in Central Park. I don't know if you saw that. Where the guy asked her to put her dog on a lead, and then she picked the phone up and phoned the police and said that he was attacking her or something like that. Now, those two things being captured and being shared on social media means that you can't suppress that.
Yeah, exactly that.
And that gives you an insight into what people are dealing with, because, you know, this stuff's been happening the whole time. The reason why the ladies don't put the phone call in is because people do it all the time. The reason why the policeman was kneeling on George Floyd, like, you know, and mistreating him from the most basic human level is because they've been doing it for a long time. It's just they've not been getting captured on camera for a long time.
Yeah.
And even, to be fair, even when they've been getting captured on camera, they've been getting away with it. And the difference this time is that the world has stood up and said we're not accepting it, and also that you've got the reality now of the policemen that were there whilst he was dealing on him are also in charge.
Yeah.
So now now you can't just, it's not good enough to say that was your partner that did it or whatever else. If you're there and you see it, you are compliant.
Yeah.
I think there's going to come a point as well where, the thing that bugs me about that video, the George Floyd one, is there was people videoing it. Now, all right, okay, I get it. No one wants to get in trouble with the police, blah, blah, blah. But there's people videoing it. And I feel like this is a massive society thing now. Someone will be in trouble, and instead of people now helping, people video. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that if that would have been videoed, that someone would have actually rushed the police officer, saved his life, nothing would have happened.
They'd be dead. They'd be dead. They'd be dead.
Well, that's obviously that's also
the problem as well, yeah. This is the reason why they're recording. If this is in the UK,
it's different.
Yeah, I believe right now, if that was in the UK with unarmed police officers, I think that the outcome will be that they would attack the policeman. I'll be just being totally honest.
Yeah, but are they different?
In the US, those guys in the US, you're dead. If you move your hands in the wrong way, that you're dead.
Yeah. So I remember I watched a film. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's called The Hate You Give.
No.
Obviously, there's big things about white police officers shooting obviously young black men and stuff like that. It was basically based around that, and it was like you said. It was the main thing was they said, "Oh, put your hands out." Had his hands, and he reached his pocket, and obviously he had a hairbrush. Bang! Just shot him straight away. Didn't even get his hairbrush at nothing, and he got up to him. hairbrush, and he was like, oh, and then he was protected and so on. It was, to be fair, it's probably one of the most powerful films I've watched. Was that The Hate U Give? To be fair, I 100% recommend it. But yeah, it's yeah, I agree with you that I feel like it's different this time. I just hope it's not. I mean, it goes deeper. I mean, we had a guy called Marcus Gale come in at one point, and he basically spoke about like racism and stuff like. He works for Kick It Out, and he just said that from their standpoint is, obviously you get all the rappers and stuff like this, and they put them words in, they put those insults into their music and stuff like that, and he said, without realizing it, by you listening to that song, by you singing that song, you're fueling like what's happened, or you're fueling other people to do it. And he had one story where he said, basically there was an incident a couple of years ago where a black player went and picked up a white lad, and he was just shouting like, yo, I don't want to say it, but yeah, you get the idea. Anyways, he comes down, he's like, yo, yeah, he must have said the word like in hello to him about 5 or 6 times. And his whole point was, then he got to training, and then because this guy thought, it's okay, so they're saying it to me, he's then got to training, he said to somebody else the same thing, and then all of a sudden it become a massive problem and stuff like that. And I think that there's 100% times where I think as a whole, everybody across all ethnic backgrounds, there's also a thing that probably everyone doesn't. There's white boys that listen to that kind of music and stuff like that sing those songs, that sing those lyrics. Now, all right, their intentions might not be bad, or they might not come across as racist, but in a, I suppose, more deeper way, you're supporting that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. I think there's a lot of people that say that. I mean, my view's less. I'm always about people. I'm always about the intent. That's me. That's what it is for me. It's about the intent. So you can be, in my opinion, you can not say a racist word to me, but if you deliberately try to restrict my progress, you try to hinder me, you try to not allow me to develop whatever else purely because of the color of my skin, that's being more racist than you standing up and calling me the N-word. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying. And a lot of people do say that, but it's all about, for me, it's always about intent. And that's why the educational piece for me is important, because, it's about having these conversations, because you need to, there's always different perspectives. Even within the black community, there's different perspectives. I'm quite a robust person, quite thick-skinned. Not a lot really bothers me. But then there'll be other people that'll be much more sensitive based on their experiences, right? So there'll be some people who've never had the experience with the police that I may have had, and so they're actually, the police bit bothers them less than the communication style that you just outlined. But for me, the police bit's like right up here, because that's what I was living.
Your own personal experience, I
was living that as a young guy.
This is a bit of a hypothetical question, but like, if we just kind of assume for a second that like racism didn't exist, do you think that then would even be an issue? You could kind of say whatever word you wanted, because everyone is treated equally. There is no racial injustice or anything like that.
Yeah, and you know what? That word probably doesn't exist if there's no racism, right? Because it was a derogatory term. So, and it's the thing is, and the reason why it's so raw in America and why it's so raw, I guess even here in the UK, is because we're not that. So from the vast majority of the guys here. So I guess if you look in the UK, you've got probably, there's the 2 major influxes of guys that come from backgrounds where they were, in Africa, or guys whose parents and, whatever ancestors have come from the West Indies, and lots of those words have, they have those negative connotations due to, coming from an enslaved people, right? So you go back, and these are the things that are kind of the things that impact you that lots of people don't understand, right? So I was having this conversation with someone online the other day. So recently, one of the things I started to do, you could do these, I don't know if you've seen them, these like DNA ancestry tests. Yeah. So it'll break down your genetic makeup, tell you where your family are from, whatever else, and then you can use that, and there's lots of different resources where you can go and start building out your family tree, start to go back. Now, what happens for lots of us, especially guys from the West Indies, is I can maybe go back 3 generations, possibly 4, before I then have, that's the end, because before that, this was somebody that was in Africa, right? So this is just the reality of the situation. So I sit down there and I'm like, right, okay, so I'm doing this thing, and I go back 3 generations, and then I realise that my, that great grandparent or great grandparent was, was kind of an enslaved person, so to speak, or they were, they were kind of born after 1833 for UK and Caribbean, and before 1865, whatever it was in the US, they were an enslaved person.
Mm.
It shows your genetic matches, right? So I matched somebody, so we've got a common 3rd generation, so we're like a 3rd generation match, common 3rd generation grandparent. This guy lives in America, and his family have gone straight to America from Ghana. Never ever been to the UK, never ever been to Jamaica. But this is the output. So what happens is it's so raw, because there are lots of people who are in the community that still remember when your life could be taken like that, could be and still have that still kind of sits in the back of them. So when those words are used, that's what that's what it kind of links to. So it's and it's deep, right? And that's the whole point of this, is about this knowledge sharing, this education piece, because I can sit down here and tell you, you can look at ancestry and I'll talk about, oh yeah, you go back 5 generations to, I can never go back 5 generations, because 5 generations ago my family weren't Bartleys. My family are only Bartleys because the person that owned the land in Jamaica, their name was Bartley, and so all of the people that worked on there, the slaves that worked on there, were given the name Bartley. So then I find a lot of Bartleys that are from the same area as me, but we're not genetically related, because we just got given the same surname. So again, but unless you have these conversations, unless you're talking about this sort of stuff, you don't even know that this exists, and then you don't know that that's the reason. Yeah, you don't even know that's the reason why people are fueled.
I think as well, you're like, even you said that, never in my whole life have I even been aware of say that until now. I was just thinking when you was talking about like the education and the talks and stuff, going back to like school and that, I don't think at any time during my schooling was any history regarding sort of black people or mixed origins or stuff like that ever discussed, ever brought to life. I was never taught about like the slavery times or nothing like that. It was always about the war and then X, Y, and Z, but it was never. So I suppose even if you're a young black man or coming through school, we're constantly learning about all the white history and stuff like this. And I feel like that's when obviously there's such a big month of Black History Month and stuff like that, because it's trying to force it through. And I feel like me personally, I don't like the school system in the sense of you see the old what's the name, cliche of, you got all the animals lined up, you say to a monkey climb a tree, and you say to an elephant climb the same tree, but you can't, but you're judging him based on what a monkey can do and stuff like that, for example. And obviously, so I'm not against it in that sense, because I feel like maybe you give people the options of what they have interest in, and you really help guide them towards that, as opposed to, do you know what I mean, like narrowing everybody into the same boat, everyone's studying the same thing and stuff like that. And then I think it comes back to the same thing of, when you're going through history, if you're constantly talking about white people history, and all the rest of it, then you're almost subconsciously, without maybe even meaning to, saying Black history doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Whereas it does matter just as much as white history. All history, relates as into one. But it's never, me personally, unless I was to speak to, people like yourself or whatever, I'd never know a single bit, about Black history. And yes, I know who Martin Luther King is. Yes, I know who Nelson Mandela is. Yes, I know what they stand for. But I know the very basic of what they do. I never knew who Malcolm X was until 2 years ago, because Harrison, Michael's son, obviously was talking to me about it and stuff like that. So I've obviously grown up. Now I'd like to think don't judge anyone. For me, it doesn't matter whether you're white, blue, red, whatever. It's irrelevant. I base my trust in the people as they are as people, and who they are as a person, as opposed to where they're from and stuff like that. But there are people out there that don't.
Right.
No. So my whole point on that is, for me, like, the education system, for me, I think massively fails people, and also, you know, society, in the sense of, one, of what you can achieve as an individual as well, but also in regards to, you know, I feel no one's born racist. It's something that's taught, whether it be subconscious or whether it be, you know, on purpose. And I think there's a lot of things that within schools can be changed to actually help with that sort of stuff, and making people understand what, you know, people from an African origin or a Caribbean origin actually, you know, went through, and understanding, because I think, like you said about people not understanding that, you know, if you meet someone, you put your arms up, that's not an aggressive manner. That's just, you know, what goes on and stuff like that, you know.
But
people don't
those are
know
all
that.
things we have to learn. Those are all things that we have to learn. And I think it's, I think it's, from our, because we've been the sort of the minority we've been able to adapt and learn all of these lessons, learn about the way that sort of, I guess, our friends that are maybe white and come from a different background, the way that they communicate and what they mean. And so, I talk about diversity and inclusion a lot. And one of the things I always say to people is, diversity is fine until you don't act like that person does. That's when it really is the challenge. When somebody acts differently to you, that's when it really, really then starts to see, actually, do you get it, right? Do you understand the fact that people are different? People just react differently in different situations. And, so a lot of it is about that. A lot of it's about the education piece. I mean, I remember speaking to, people and, talking, going through history, and there's a guy called Lewis, I think it's Lewis Latimer, one of the, and he works with Alexander Graham Bell and, Thomas Edison, sort of, instrumental in the invention of the telephone and the light bulb and stuff. But, I never learned about him in school. So, we're talking about the education system and about Black history. But actually, Black history is everybody's history, really. Because, most people know who Alexander Graham Bell is. Most people know who, Thomas Edison is, but they didn't know who this guy was, right? So that was when I started trying to have to do a bit of research myself. So you have to self-teach. And that's, that's part of it. I mean, my view on the education system is that, and again, I was having this conversation with, one of my coaches the other day, and we'll talk about it. His views are very similar to mine in that, it's more about, I think it should be more guided, right? You kind of ask somebody to go and you give them a framework and ask them to go and sort of, especially when they get to a certain age, go and research something and then come and present it back to the class.
Yeah.
What you get is you get a better output from the kid because they're passionate about what they're learning about. Get a better output for the class because they're all learning from each other. And then you get a more diverse rate, broader sort of subject matter that's covered. And I think that's just one idea, but I think there's lots of things that they can do within schools to try and encourage that. But the most important thing is that you need to talk about it because, race and ethnicity are one of those things that people don't like talking about. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. So unless you've really kind of grown up around someone and you really feel that you can ask questions, people don't.
I feel as well, sometimes you have to, you feel like when you talk about, it's even when you go talk about stuff like religion as well, it's sometimes you can talk about it, but kind of feeling like you're treading on eggshells because all it would take is one person to, I said this to Ian before we come on here, all it would take is one person to use the analogy of what I said about the monkey and elephant, and all of a sudden it's a big problem. And actually, it's nothing to do with that. But someone out there is making it into something that it's not. Do you know what I mean? Just through whatever personal, that they have or whatever.
That's why for me, like I said, it's always about intent. And I have to take my views on, I trust my gut with that. And so what it means is sometimes somebody can say something that might be offensive to someone, but it's not offensive to me because I genuinely believe they didn't mean it. But then also other times somebody might be really quite crafty about how they're constructing the way that they're conversing with me, but I know what they mean. I know what the undertone is. Yeah. And that's, for me, the biggest challenge through this whole last 2 weeks since the George Floyd piece. The thing that I've struggled to deal with most has been the covert racism. What I mean by that is on social media platforms, I can deal with, I can accept, I can engage with somebody who is almost outwardly racist. right? And they're saying what they're saying. They're saying what they mean, what they believe, whatever. We can engage in a dialogue. I can attempt to educate them as to why I think their views are wrong and ridiculous. We can engage in a dialogue. We might get to the end of the stage and might be like, look, you know what? This person, you know, is going to never be, we're never going to see eye to eye. We're never going to get it. Or it might be that I can show them a couple of aspects they've not figured about before. And you can help them, educate them, whatever. The toughest part has been the covert racism. And the covert racism normally displays itself by people saying they're not racist. So somebody could say they're not racist because they like me, or they get on with me. But they get on with, the reasons why they get on with me are because, I don't know, I like football, they like football. Or when they probably didn't like me at the beginning, but as they got to know me, you know, we kind of found some common ground and it's cool. Yeah. But then anybody else, a normal guy, just any old random black guy that they see, they will have a problem with.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like, you know, I don't allow the fact that we've got a relationship to take away the fact that if you didn't know me, you would make a call on me without understanding what I'm like as a person. And that's the, you know, that's the toughest thing that I've had to deal with, is the covert racism. And I've seen it a lot on social media, and I've spoken to a lot of my friends who have said, you know, and these are robust guys, right? These are guys who are, you know, men of the world, if you like. You know, they've seen a lot, been through a lot, whatever. And they're saying to me, you know what, I need to step back from social media for a bit. I need to
social media is poisonous.
I can't come off of this for a bit, because what I'm reading, and the worst thing about, and I think the biggest platform for where it's really hit people has been Facebook, because I think Facebook feels like the most personal of the social medias, right? You've got platforms, you've got Instagram, Twitter, whatever, LinkedIn. I think that LinkedIn much more professional. Twitter and Instagram is kind of, we're just putting stuff out there, whatever. But Facebook tends to be the people that you kind of regard as being in your social circles, your, you know, acquaintances, whatever. Yeah. When you see that covert racism among those people, that's when I think people have really struggled to deal with. You know, guys who they've seen over 10, 15 years, and you'll see them out or whatever, and, you know, you shake hands, give them a hug or whatever, you know, buy them a drink, have a chat. Might not call him every day, but you know what, you kind of know each other like that. And then you're seeing this guy post stuff, you know, this is what we're struggling to deal with.
That's my big thing. Like I'm a big thing on like social media, in the sense of, don't get me wrong, I use it like everybody else. In a way, it's kind of it's addictive, I guess, in some sense as well, because it's become like the big thing in modern society as well. But as good as it is in regards to bringing to light all these things that you would never see on the news, or you never see in the newspaper and stuff like that, which I think is great. But then also at the same time, I also feel that there's a lot of stuff that's I call it fraudulent, so like fake. People put out fake stuff. They give off, you know, you might see like for example, a young footballer who might go and do one training session on his own in the park, video it, and put it up as if he does it every day. So you've got stuff like that on there, and then you get a few of them. and then you get things where, like, for example, you know, I think the couple one's the most relatable one, and everyone's a happy couple on social media. No one ever sees it, so as a person who's maybe single, for example, it makes you feel vulnerable because, do you know what I mean? And then for me, the biggest one is that it is great because it lightens everything, but it gives anybody and everybody a voice, which I think can then spark a lot of negative side effects from everything as well. So there'll always be some idiot somewhere along the line that will, even in the situation with George Floyd, there'll be somewhere along the line saying, no, it's nothing to do with that, it's this, it's that. You know, and all of a sudden that now becomes a big thing, and then sometimes I feel like that then deflects away from that specific situation, because now people are engaged in what this idiot said. Do you know what I mean?
I even with that, I feel like that's more acceptable. That's more acceptable for me on a Twitter or an Instagram. If one of my Facebook connections does that, I've got sort of a bit more of a problem with it. Yeah,
so it's a more personal connection, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what you're saying, right? So, you know, that's when it becomes really, really difficult, because you're looking, saying, well, what do I do here? How do I react to this person? How do I engage with them? Do I engage with them? Do I need to, you know, do I need this kind of energy around me? And I think, like I said, what I'm hearing and what I'm learning from a lot of the guys that I know well is that they're at the stage where they're saying, look, I just need to step back because I'm reading this stuff and I can't believe that this person would say that.
Scary, yeah. Yeah, 100%.
And it's people, people are hurting. This is the thing, right? So if people are hurting, it's like, I feel as though it's almost like it's like a grieving process. People are hurting because the reality is that, like I said, less so in the UK in terms of actually losing your life. But if you're, like for me right now, I wouldn't go to America.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go. Do you know what I mean? Like right now, I wouldn't go because they could kill you. They could kill me just because.
And this is where you kind of say, so I was just going to say that with regards to this allyship, like this is where we all have to stand up and say, like, this isn't right, because it'd be easy for us to sit here and say, "Court, America have got a problem, haven't they?" Actually, this is a worldwide issue, but because of the violence in America, they need us to stand up just as much as they need to stand up for themselves. This is why for me it is such a big issue. Because you can't.
I think as well, like one of the things I saw, which I'd never seen before, was, again, it was on Twitter. For me, I feel like Twitter is like the modern day news. That I literally don't use it for anything else but to see what the hell's going on in the world. And there was a video. I don't know the woman's name. There's a black woman in America, and they was in a peaceful protest, right? Walking down the street, and you had obviously the military out on the streets, protecting the streets. Rubbish. They're not protecting the streets. They were there because they wanted, they were seeing that actually this might not be a peaceful process, and we have to protect businesses. No one's even in businesses, but anyway, so they were there, and she was like, "March with us," and they were like, "We can't. I'm not allowed. I can't because we've got to patrol the area. Patrol the area from what? I've got to make sure the protest." Well, we are the protest. If you march with us, there's nothing to worry about. You are part of the protest. And basically come to the thing where they couldn't do it. So she said, take a knee. And then they said, okay, cool. He took a knee, and everyone in the military, everyone around all took a knee. And for me, that was the first time I've ever seen anyone of I suppose, like a police background, military background, or whatever, actually stand with the people that are protesting. Normally it's them against them. Oh no, trying to calm them down and stuff like this. And even if in a peaceful process, you're always going to get the odd idiot that's going to not be peaceful.
Absolutely.
But it's not fixate on that person. It's understand the deeper meaning behind it, I think. And obviously, that was for me. That's why I said again, with the celebrities that get involved and everything that's going on, I do feel like this is different now because I'd never seen that before. I'd never seen that, like you were saying, unity across no matter what race it was, no matter whether you was in the military, the police department, whatever. I'd never seen that before.
No. That's definitely different. I mean, I feel, I can feel it, right? I can see it in the UK across businesses. You can see that, Nike put a tweet out and, people will say, well, it is what it is. And then Adidas will, retweet Nike, right? So you get these two global rivals that will, come together for that. And you get you get Netflix putting stuff out. You get all of these big global brands that do that, and it helps because it shows that people won't stand for it. And I think what will happen is that we, I think that it feels as though it's made me more conscious, right? So I would think about where I spend my money. I would think about, right, okay, how are these brands, how are these companies, how did they react? In the moment of need, how did they react, right? So I've seen this from Nike, I've seen this from Adidas. I haven't really seen it from Puma. I don't know if they have or they haven't, but I haven't seen it, right? So then I'm sitting down saying, well, do I want to spend my money with these guys?
Yeah.
Because when the time was there to be standing up, I didn't see it. And I'm not saying they didn't, that was just an example, but I'm just saying, so I think that's what happens in time, that people just become more conscious about what they do. And, like I said, the allyship's been, for me, that it's just been brilliant because the amount of support that you get from people and people reaching out. And like I said, having conversations like this, people being able to ask questions, because it's always been almost that kind of the subject where nobody wants to talk about. It exists, the elephant in the room, right? Everybody know it exists, but don't really get it. And, I think sometimes players that have, played for me, so Ian, we've experienced a little bit, and some of the guys that play for me now, have seen how different it can be when we're at football, and this stuff's going on. And for me, when I look at football, and I think football could be such a big help in terms of solving these issues, but actually the only way that will happen is via the players.
Yeah.
For me, nobody can tell me, nobody can convince me that the FA care. There were countless instances last year in non-league football, for instance, where people were racially abused. We had a couple in our situation, and the FA have got no energy for it. They've got no energy.
Yeah.
They can't be bothered. And we had one game in particular where it was very clear to everyone in the place that something was not right with this referee's decisions, and sent off a couple of players. I got sent off. As I got sent off, and I'm walking from the dugout to the corner of the pitch, it's taken me about a minute or two to get through there, because I had the support of the opposition shaking my hand, saying, "Look, you've got a right to be upset today." I made it very clear in my social media rant afterwards, which occasionally I do on Twitter. I said, "Look, I look forward to the FA calling me on this one, because I know what the real issue was here, and we're gonna have to explore it." And I can tell you that from that day until now, I've not received a letter from the FA about being suspended for that game.
Do you think as well with stuff like that, it's people do, or I say corporations like the FA, for example, and even people, their first natural instinct is to jump to the defensive, as opposed to actually, okay, this isn't an attack on me, this isn't an attack on the corporation, this is something that's being brought to light that we need to address. But I feel like if we admit it, that we've got someone like this within our environment, it's going to then be a bad reflection on us. So therefore, they get defensive, they try and squash it as if actually, no, it's nothing to do with us. I feel like maybe that sometimes is a thing.
Yeah, but the FA are, you go to the FA, you go to Wembley in the corridors of power. I went there once when they were talking to me about the discipline of my side, and so with this three-man panel, I sit down there. One of the guys says to me, "Oh, how do your team play, Mark?" And I was like, "Hey, what do you mean by that?" What do you mean? They high energy? Do you ask them to go and press the ball high? And I said, "Yeah, we press the ball, and we do what we need to do." And he then proceeded to give me about another 90 seconds of a discussion as to where he links the fact that because I asked my teams to press, that equated to them being, essentially thugs, right? And smashing challenges into people. And I just I couldn't understand how he made that connection. But what happened when we got in there is he'd made a call on me straight away. And again, you know what it was, and I learned from that time is the way that you go there and the way that you kind of look. He's looking at me, he's thinking, okay, well, yeah, this guy looks.
You're being judged before you even open your mouth.
But again, like I said, this has been the reality of it, and this is what part. Like I said, the great part is that we've got this ally piece that goes on now. But what needs to happen is we need to see action. We need to see deliverables. We need to be able to sit down here in 2 years' time and say, actually, these are the steps that we've made since then. And that's why I really question whether or not that will happen, because first of all, you need the people in power to want to make it happen. At the moment, Boris will even stand short of saying that what happened is wrong. So I don't know. And then when you look at football specifically, you need the FA to really take a tough stance. And the FA just is not fit for purpose anymore. It's not fit for the way that people are in the modern day. So
I think it's that thing, isn't it? Like if you look at a business, and for example, and you've got, I don't know, all of the board members are all like singing one way, but then the owner is the complete opposite. Well, nothing's going to change because he's the one that, do you know what I mean, calls the shots. I guess it's kind of like the same way. There will be people within the FA that will, for example, be all for what's going on. They're supporting, they stand by. But if the people at the top end aren't willing to, be open-minded to it, then nothing's going to change from their standpoint. That's in my opinion. Which I disagree with, but I just think, unfortunately, that's kind of, I guess, what we're coming up. People would rather protect themselves and a reputation that they feel that might be perceived of them, than actually deal with something that's a bigger issue, because people are more selfish and inclined to just think about themselves.
People are threatened, right? You sit here, like, even I know I can sit here and talk about this. We'll put this out. People will hear about the fact of what I've said about the FA. The FA will have a problem with me, right? So how they deal with that will be whether or not they can decide to try and throw up some kind of trumped up thing based on the social media or stuff that I've said, comments, I don't know, or whether or not it just means that over the course of the extended period that my team get less breaks than the average. Believe me, these things happen. And before, I think one of the other good things about this whole process is it eliminates that piece of where people talk about it and think that it's like a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. I can direct you to some of the guys that work with me, and they can talk to you about what they see week in, week out when they're at Marlow Football Club. They will talk to you about some of the decisions that they see when they're there because of how, the team's perceived. And my team is, culturally diverse. So, we had last season, well, not season just gone, the season before, we had a situation where we played a side. We played a side in the FA Cup and we drew 0-0. On a Sunday, and we had one player booked. They had, I think, 4 or 5 players booked. I think they had 5, and 4 of their players were booked for fouling one of my players, the same player. So we turn up on we got the replay on the Tuesday. In between that, on their social media fans forum, they start talking about us and whatever. And Marlow are just this bunch of black boys that come from Reading that don't care about the club. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't understand why the ethnicity of my players are important. They're like, if you don't like the players, we're definitely good, whatever. But what is this?
Bring the ethnicity into
right.
It could just be the players.
Right. Get there on the Tuesday. Clearly, my players have seen this. This has now been shared. It's out there. We're angry. I can get into the changing room, and as a manager, you start to learn. I get in the changing room, and I can feel it from my players. I can feel it. I know that we're in a situation now where, we're kicking off in an hour's time. So Tuesday night, you don't have long to get these players in the right mental space, and I can feel this thing. We win the game, there's a little flashpoint at the end, whatever else. I get, the FA, they call you in over some disciplinary piece, and it's like, I said to them, well, look, this is what fueled it. Okay? This is what it is. At the time, we were firing it out on Twitter. Here's the picture. Again, people scroll through my Twitter history, you'll see it in there. This is what I showed. FA had no interest. When I'm at the hearing and I'm saying to them, well, look, the reason why we got 4 players sent off after the end of the game, or 2 players sent off after the end of the game here, is because of this.
Yeah.
What do you think happened between the 2 days? Surely you can see that on the Sunday we had 1 player booked, we've got no problem. There's this thing that's been thrown in the mix, in the melting pot, and then on the Tuesday we do it. And the worst thing was that the club refused to distance themselves from the statement that was made. What I expected from the club was to say, look, this is on one of our fans, or this is a view that we don't share, whatever. They refused to do that. So we turn up on the Tuesday and we have to deal with that. And yet everybody will turn around and say, oh yeah, Marlow got players sent off. Marlow got players sent off again. They don't understand what that is. They don't know that my players have been subject to that. And then I have to deal with it. I had a situation last year. One of my players was racially abused. You go into at the end of the game, we go in. You've got a player who's experienced, in his 30s, and he's in tears in the changing room because he's been racially abused on the pitch. I then have the rest of my players sitting down there and they're thinking, like, what is going on? And then you expect the FA to do something, right? And then, you fast forward 5 weeks, 6 weeks, you get a case handler from the FA. You then try to call them and it all goes quiet. And then they say to me, well, what's the point, Barts? Because if these guys racially abuse us, we might as well deal with it ourselves. Because,
I was going to say, that's what happens, isn't it? Like, right. When you look for that help and you don't get it, well, it's going to come one or two ways. Either people are going to end up basically crumbling and, like I said, giving up football and not willing to put myself through it and losing that passion, which they shouldn't have to do. Or it's going to go the other way and it's just literally going to be carnage. And they're going to go, do you know what? You're not willing to support me. You're not willing to help me. you're not willing to discipline these people. Cool, I'm going to do it myself. And then, but then again, then the problem that becomes is, like you said with what happened before, is they don't look into the reasons why. They just look into the actual incident. And then all of a sudden, then you get them portrayed as this bad, da 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 da. But actually, no, look at where it's come from. Look, it's like if you say as a coach or a manager, all right, the ball might have gone in the back of the net, but it's come from somewhere. There's been a lead of events that have led up to that ball going in the back. It's the same thing. Yeah,
100%. And this is what we deal with. This is what I deal with regularly. And I've got, like I said, my team's diverse, and the white players in the team will tell you how often we just don't get, and how often they just see it. And it's just like, these things they're unfathomable. You just don't, you can't make it make sense. It's illogical.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, this is kind of where we move forward now. Is I think as players, we all need to kind of stand alongside each other and fight it. So it will take the whole team to, whether it walk the pitch or even.
I think the main thing though, Ian, is like it's the sustainability of it. It's all well and good. Like even now, we're going back into the Premier League and stuff like that. It's all well and good for the first two games, all the players taking the knee. That's great. But then as soon as they stop doing that, it's almost like it'll all just be, a distant memory. Whereas if it is something that people sustain now all the way through until it is literally eradicated, I think that's more powerful. So I feel like the sustainability of this, making a stand, standing together, being united, saying that it's not okay, rather than like, you saw in the Premier League years ago, the Say No to Racism was on the shirts for one season. And then the following season, it wasn't on there. The shirts were in, the players will wear the shirts for maybe 2 or 3 games a season, then they won't wear them. So I feel like it's like they're almost trying to tick a box, say, yes, we're against racism, yes, we're not, we don't have, we all together. But once that box has been ticked, it's like, okay, cool, now just back on with normal. Whereas I think, no, it has to be sustained. Me personally, I think it has to be sustained all the way through until it is taken seriously by the right people, until it is changed, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just I do believe though that the players so I believe that one of the things about the UK, which I think we have, is I think that the elite black sports people in the UK are more willing to, really put that on the line than I think what the Americans have to this point, right? So you look at Colin Kaepernick or whatever, and he was taking the knee, and some players were with him and some weren't. I think when the NFL restarts, that you'll see that there'll be a lot more of that. I think the NBA players will do that now, but I think in the UK it's unquestionable. I think that those players now, and you're listening to what they're saying, and I have the belief that those players they've had enough. I think as a community, I think the black people are just tired. I think that's the thing. I think we're exhausted of these incidents. We're exhausted, we're tired, and I think particularly in America, you can see the fatigue in the people that essentially what's happening is they're just being murdered by the police. They're just it's a real threat to life. I mean, I've got a friend on Twitter, and he was putting out the other day saying for the first time in ever, he's worried about what time he's going to go for a jog, because if he goes for a jog at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Well, you saw it, didn't you? You saw it with that guy that got killed by the 2 drivers, didn't you?
Yeah. You run to the wrong neighborhood. And this is it. And like, people are killing you just because. So the reason why, like I said, at the moment, I have no desire to go to America is because I can be killed just because I'm black.
Yeah, literally, yeah.
And so, like I said, it's from our end in the UK. I think the ally piece has been really important. It's been I think it's been great when you look on the global society. I think that's the big thing that's come out of it, is the unity that's actually across the vast majority of the world. And you've got these pockets of people that, in the US, you've got the guys that clearly have their views and want to do that. In the UK, we've got people that are masquerading as though they want to turn up to try and protect.
Yeah, I saw that. So
they're
not doing it now.
Right, that was only going to end one way, right? So I'm glad that kind of, they kind of put that pause on the march, because you wouldn't want that to overshadow what was going on. But why, what are the police doing about that? You got a guy like Tommy Robinson going online saying, if you're a lad, if you're this, if you're that, you should be there. That's inciting violence. Like he's trying to get. What are the police doing?
It's almost like it's almost like he's trying to go back in time. Where for me, the closest thing I'll ever know to, I suppose the diversion that he had from black and white in America was the film Remember the Titans, and obviously it's almost like he's trying to recreate that in a sense, where it is literally. But I mean, I don't think we will ever get to that again, because I feel like it's come such a long way from them. But there are small groups like what he was saying that are willing for that to happen.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you need to, like you were saying, he's done that. What's happened? Nothing. So it's also it's done by that, and it's done to the main person. Do you know what I mean? Because there'll be people that will just jump on his bandwagon.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I think sport's going to play like a huge role in this.
I hope so.
If you look at like kind of golf started up again, they're all taking a knee before they tee off. You mentioned Colin Kaepernick. I mean, he done that 4 years ago, and his actions now are starting to come to fruition. It's he's basically sacrificed his career, isn't he? But the NFL are starting to say that they're going to start. Well, I think he's going to get an apology, which for me should just be the very start of it. But a lot of.
But how bad is that? He done it 4 years ago, and if you go back to them, how many people were giving him abuse for doing that?
Yeah.
Like, how? Do you know what I mean? How bad is it that something as big as this, that essentially shouldn't even exist in modern, in modern society, really, with how far we've come and stuff like that. That someone that's really getting to a point like a lot of people are now was not vindicated, but looked upon to be a problem, because do you know what I mean?
Yeah. How far back do you go as well? Like, how bad is it that we had slaves in the first place? Like the point is we're starting to make waves now, and we can't change what happened in the past, but we're in a position now where actually we can have a great impact on what's going to happen going forward. And that's really, for me, what we've got to focus on, and sport's going to be a huge platform for that. I think football's going to be huge for it as well. I think I read that the Premier League, they're all going to take a knee beforehand. Now I think you'll start to see if there's when crowds do get back in the stadiums, if there is racist abuse. Now you start to see players walking off the pitch, walking off in unity. Clubs condemning it and saying no more. It's I think we will start to make waves in that, and for me, that's where it needs to happen, because there is no leadership in the governing bodies at the moment. Certainly, if you look at FIFA, UEFA, particularly the FA, they're not leading the way. You saw that with how they dealt with the whole COVID thing, let alone with the racism side of things as well. Like the whole place just stinks of lack of leadership, and it's got to come from.
Well, imagine you've had to wait 10 weeks just to get any decisions on anything.
Yeah.
And it's not down to the coronavirus. It's all down to no one wants to get sued. No, it's all money at the end of the day.
That's what can change it, right? Because I think that when you look at those big governing bodies of the sports, I think what can really have an impact is if these businesses, if these brands are really focused and willing to back themselves, and that sponsorship stuff, they can start to hold some of these bodies to account. They can go to FIFA and say, right, tell us about your policy for equality. They can go to UEFA and do the same thing. Go to the ECB or whatever, and they can go to PGA to whatever and say, look, no, you need to tell us what you're doing to make sure that there's equality, whether that's based on race, whether that's based on gender, sexual orientation, whatever it is. Show us what you're doing to make sure that you're being fair and inclusive to everyone. And this is where I feel that we're at the moment, in terms of the brands are aware, they stood behind it, and now nobody will want to associate themselves with something that can tarnish their own personal brand. So I think, like I said, conversations like this are always good, because you need to be able to have this open dialogue. Everybody's not going to agree, everybody's not going to see the same angles, but it's just important that we can understand and respect each other's perspectives and say,
I think that's the main thing as well, is, okay, like you said, not everybody's going to see the same angle, because your experiences are different to mine. So I would never be able to understand 100% what, where you're coming from. As long as I can respect, in my opinion, people can respect it and try to relate and try to understand as best they can, that's all you can do. I'm never going to know, I'm never going to know the things you've gone through. I'm never going to feel the things that have happened. But if I can be open-minded enough to see how you feel the way you do because of what's gone on, and that I can respect that, and it becomes a bit more understandable. I feel that's what people can really do, as opposed to be like narrow-minded or closed up about it. Some people just don't want to know, unfortunately.
No, it's true, man. It's true.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get there though, and I hope we can jump on a call in the future and say, like you said, hey, this is where we were, and look where we are now.
Absolutely. I believe that we will. I think that, like, look, there's enough goodwill to make it happen. I just think that, we need to change to us a bit to get there. But look, I mean, this is good, right? We had the conversation. I think it's good that everyone gets to hear this, and many other people can kind of listen and get their own view on it.
Definitely. Right. We got 3 minutes left on the timer, so I think I've taken enough of your evening already, mate. I can't thank you enough for jumping on with us. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope people watching it enjoy it, and I hope a lot of people can stand behind everyone, and kind of the more equality we can get in society, and certainly in our sport, then we're going to be better for it. So.
Thanks to you guys, man. I appreciate the opportunity to just have the platform to speak about this stuff, and like I said, and just be you two willing to engage on it is, it's massive. This is what it's about. We need to be able to do this. So, it's all good. It's all good.
I think it's good. Yeah, like I said, the more we can put things out there, the more we can get people to listen and stuff. It's only going to help, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Definitely.
So, even if it's a little bit, or it's one person, or than it was before. So.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Exactly. Right.
No, brilliant. Thank you. Anyways, appreciate it, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot, man.
See you later. Bye.